I was like pacing the kitchen floor, and I remember going like this, like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I sat in my bathroom and I had suicidal thoughts of literally like graphic suicidal thoughts. And I was like, this is not me. Like, this is coming from someone who's never once had any mental health issues, maybe a little bit of postpartum, but that was just sadness, not suicidal ideation. And I was freaking out. I didn't know who to tell. And I physically didn't feel well either. Like, I was an insomniac. I couldn't eat. I was nauseous. I was shaking all day. Literally, the moment I woke up until I went to bed, I kept telling people, I am not okay. Like, something's not right. So I go back to my doctor. And at that day, I literally felt like my skin was crawling. Like, I was like, I wanted to cut my skin like that. I can remember thinking, I want to cut my skin just to get out of it. And she was like, obviously that we need to take you off this. She's like, yes, it comes with a black box warning. She goes, and we tell people like normally if it's not that, tough to just push through it. Because with antidepressants, you need to push through like the first 3 months apparently.
Yeah.
She's like, we don't want you to push through this. So then they put me on Buspar. And Buspar made me enraged to the point where I told my husband, I cannot be trusted driving. I will literally drive my car through a wall. And this is, again, coming from me who's never said any of this stuff, felt this stuff. Mm-hmm. And then it started happening where the images that Zoloft gave me of suicidal ideation, OCD picked that up. So I've always been a little bit obsessive. Like, people have always joked like, Erica, you're super hyper fixated on stuff. Like, when I want to do something, I will do it. You can't tell me no.
Right.
I will pick a new hobby and I'll spend $1,000 and I just hyper fixate. I never knew that was OCD. I thought it was like germs or like compulsions with like priorities. So not only till just honestly maybe 6 months ago did I get diagnosed with that, because I thought me hyperfixating on the images that Zoloft gave me meant that I was suicidal. And I thought, oh, but I don't feel like I want to die, but maybe I do because I'm thinking these things so often. And so finally, until I met with an OCD specialist, did they say, you're OCD. That's called Puro. That's called that's called harm OCD. And I was like, I had no idea this was a thing.
Right.
So before that, I obviously went to therapy and I did EMDR, which has been life-changing for me. I still see my EMDR specialist every week now. But backtracking, I even came up with, like a safety plan for myself. I remember laying in bed, just feeling really sad and like everything just felt heavy.
Right.
And this happened during the fall. So it's dark already. It's like cloudy and the weather's not great. And I just remember laying in bed before I took my stepdaughter to volleyball, Googling luxury mental health facilities. Like, I'm bougie enough to say luxury because that's what I did. But I was like, I need to go someplace that has sunshine. And like, I know my insurance isn't going to do that. It's going to be a state-run facility. And I don't want to be put in a state-run facility. But I remember Googling places and writing them down and tucking it away in my sock drawer and told my husband, like, that's my emergency plan. It got really bad one day. I was laying in bed and I told my husband, I was like, I can't describe like how I'm feeling right now. I said, but I feel very like, what's the word? Not compulsive, like reactive. Like I'm really reactive right now. Like if there was a bridge, I would go jump off. Like that's how I feel. And I'm bawling, I'm crying. And I'm like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm like, I don't feel safe by myself. So he literally texted my father and like my in-laws and was like, Fit Love needs someone to stay with her. My best friend stayed with me. My mom stayed with me. And I just like, I almost reverted back to childhood. Like my mom was there. I remember the Christmas tree was up because it was around Christmas and the lights are like pretty. And she's rubbing my head in her lap. And she's like, I could cry. I was thinking about it. She's like, you're going to be okay. And I'm like, I don't feel okay. And I was scared. Like I really thought I was going to do something. I mean, even now you can see like, that's not me. And thinking of that is like terrifying. I have a beautiful life and great kids. And I just remember crying. And I cry now, not because I'm still sad, but because I'm like, I can't believe I was there or people experience that. So I just continue to get help. This sounds crazy, but like I have so many great resources where I knew that something wasn't chemistry, like right in my body, maybe not my brain. Like I knew something obviously was not right there, but having learned all the things that I've learned about a woman's health and her hormones, I'm like, something's not right with me. And I'm going to get graphic. Sorry if men are watching this, but like I was having 3 periods a month. I was sweating the bed and like all this happened and I'm mentally really struggling. Like something's not right. So I ran a Dutch test with my company, which is a hormonal Dutch test. And lo and behold, my hormones were tanked. I was literally going through perimenopause. My thyroid levels were awful.
Yeah.
All of those things was a perfect storm. And then adding the Zoloft on top of it just kind of made it really bad. And I have friends and family who are on antidepressants, and it's life-saving for them. Like it's absolutely life-saving. And I so wish it worked for me. And there's tests out there that you can take. We discussed that to see what one will work best for you. And lo and behold, the ones that I was put on were not my right ones.
Right.
But after I started getting better and fixing my hormones and working with, like, I take hormone replacement therapy and fixing my thyroid and really honing in on those modalities with my therapy, OCD therapy, EMDR, and I do somatic therapy. I started getting better to the point, like, now I'm like, I don't need medication.
Yeah.
I still have the prescription of Prestique that was on my green light on my Gene site. I still have it in my bedside, and I think it's kind of a safety feeling for me. But yeah, that snowballed really quickly.
Yeah. Well, I give you, first off, all the credit in the world to be able to open up and tell that story. And I feel that same emotions because I've been through some of those same thoughts. And it is such a scary moment because when you're in it, you feel like you're never going to get out of it.
Yeah.
And you feel helpless. And it's just so crazy to look back at where I was probably 16 months ago.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing where I'm laying in bed every day and I'm depressed, crying, wrote a goodbye letter, took pills, thought about jumping off a bridge, wanted to lay down in traffic one day. Like there's just so many things that go towards that depression, that those suicidal thoughts that just hurt you so much. When you were having those thoughts and going through those moments, and I know it was emotional for you, and I respect you so much for opening up about that, just how scary was it? Because for someone that's like never felt those things before, to all of a sudden be suicidal and think about, you mentioned jumping off a bridge or feeling like you needed to cut your skin off. How scary were those suicidal thoughts?
Insanely scary. And then it's not only like scary, you also feel shameful that you had those thoughts to begin with. And you're like, why? Like, my life is great. I have an amazing husband. I have an amazing career. I've reached everything I've wanted. I'm successful in every sense of the word. Like, why do I feel this way? And then you're scared to even tell anyone.
Yeah.
And people will love you and want to care for you, but like when you are mentally struggling, they struggle too, right? And there's only so much that they can take. And I learned that really quickly. As much as my family loves me, there's only so much they can take. And I will never forget this conversation. I was having a really bad day. And this was again in December and January, which honestly I feel like was my worst. And my husband and I, before we bought this home, we bought land, and it was like going to be our dream home. It was almost 2 acres. It was on a beautiful hill where it overlooked the city. And we were in the process of like talking with builders, and I'm really sad one night, and he's like, just get in the car with me. And we drive to our land, and he goes, look, Fitlove, look, you bought this. Like, I had bought that land myself. And he was like, you bought this. Like, look what's going to happen. And I cried, and I looked him in the car, and I said, I'm not going to make it until we build this house. And he was like, what do you think life's going to be like without you? And I was like, I don't know, like probably good for you guys, because you just think that, right? And I'll never forget that conversation and how much he just was like, I can't live without you. And he's like, and if he's like, but I can't watch you all the time. That's what he said. He's like, I can't watch you all the time. You have to fight this battle yourself, and we have to get you help. So for him saying that, like, he can't watch me all the time, I was like, wow. Because when you're depressed, I feel like you must lean on your resources too much sometimes.
Yep.
And you really rely on those people. But at the end of the day, you really have to take, and for my husband to say, I can't watch you all the time, I was like, wow, I'm going to have to be by myself again. Like, this is when I was having people stay with me and do this stuff. And I was like, people are going to go on with their lives. I'm going to have to learn how to do this.